I'm Nicola Talent and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. What a morning.
Yeah, what a morning for you, yeah?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I got a bloody flat tire on the way in.
This is on your bike now, not on your Ferrari or something like that.
No, on my push bike. And it's about my fifth one in the past 2 months, so it's really annoying. And I've never got around to buying a pump or carrying any sort of repair kit or anything.
Yeah.
I have this constant sort of thing that works mostly, but damsel in distressy, and somebody sort of sorts it out. But this morning it didn't work.
Did it not?
Everybody else was flying into work, and
not enough makeup on or something like that.
No, it was just all my hair's a mess. Yeah. Everything's a mess. So anyway, I walked about 25 minutes to where I knew there was a bike shop and it was closed.
Yeah.
And I had a bit of a moment outside that. And then I ended up hopping on a train.
Yeah.
With the bike, and eventually I got here.
Yeah.
And we hadn't time to go for coffee.
No.
So we're on the instant.
So this is a heroic tale.
It is.
Nicola bringing you a podcast under all conditions.
What about yourself?
No, not grand. I had a filling yesterday and that's still sore.
Is it?
You know what the dentist told me? He said, or she said, you've got exaggerated jaw muscles. That's what she said. Basically said your jaw muscles are overdeveloped. Basically, like
that's a lockjaw.
Yeah, kind of like basically like a human pit bull, I suppose.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Exaggerated
jaw muscles. Like of all the muscles to get exaggerated, surely the jaw muscles are the
Well, it's all the yapping you do.
Is it?
Is it fixable like with cosmetic?
Grinding my no, it's not fixable.
No.
From grinding my teeth.
Do you know what I have come to the conclusion, by the way? And I've realised that we're actually going to have to do our Sunday World 50th show ourselves here in the studio again.
Right.
Because there's so much that has to be cut out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, we just bloop, legal. But anyway, when we were discussing about the nicknames and how the really mean nicknames come from the street and stuff, and all the various ones, including people's girth and their facial imperfections and all, I decided that there should be a rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That if it's not fixable by cosmetic surgery, it's not allowed.
Right.
I think that should be the bar.
Right. That's the moral standard you're going to live by.
Yeah. So certainly for us anyway, in the actual mainstream media as opposed to the street. Anyway, we're here after Planes, Trains and Automobiles to discuss Carl Frampton and his comments about MTK and Daniel Kinahan.
Yeah, I mean, so Carl Frampton obviously is a boxer from Belfast or from Tigers Bay up in the north. You know, became a world champion, one of the best to come out of this island. He's written an autobiography, and the autobiography was launched, I suppose, last week. Now, for us, one of the first things you think of when you see these boxers is MTK and what was an international, global scandal in the world of boxing. I think Carl Frampton launched his autobiography as if that wasn't going to be referred to. However, in fairness to him, he's answered questions and they were all confronted him on Saturday about it at a book signing.
Yeah, in Eason's. So going back to Carl Frampton, he joined MTK in 2017.
Yeah.
At which point Daniel Kinahan, it had sort of been put out there that he had taken a back seat. And it was, I think, before the announcement came that Sandra Vaughan had bought outright MTK. Was it MGM at the time?
Yeah, it'd been, obviously, we've gone over this many times.
But when did it change to MTK?
It had changed to MTK.
It had changed to MTK. Right. So that she took over and she had bought it outright, and that Daniel Kinahan and Matthew Macklin had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
That's the point where he joins up.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, Tyson Fury was on the books, as was Billy Joe Saunders, my old friend.
Yeah.
I haven't had a text from him in quite a while, actually.
Yeah.
He's been quiet. But it had built up. There was about 100 plus boxers on the books of MTK at that point in time, from its lowly beginnings in 2012, where it started. The first boxer signed up was Ian Dixon, who was sanctioned along with Daniel Kinahan, his cousin. But anyway, that's when he joined. And Frampton was there throughout the time that, I suppose, Kinahan came back out of the shadows, thanks largely to Tyson Fury and the selfie video.
Yeah.
He was somebody who, I don't think he was a great defender of Daniel Kinahan, or had he been questioned about him in the past?
No, like, I mean, he had so Carl Frampton, obviously, a lot of the book is being centred around the case of Barry McGuigan.
Yeah.
And so Carl Frampton was asked about MTK and Daniel Kinahan in court in 2020. And he was also asked, he also made a comment in 2021 after the Panorama Investigate special into Kinahan's. So he had maybe not defended him on a personal level. So
what I was giving him there was that he wasn't a Sonny Edwards.
No, he wasn't
somebody that every opportunity he got, he was kind of out defending the honour of Daniel Kinahan. But he was, of course, questioned in court.
Yeah, so he wasn't defending Daniel Kinahan. I think he said in the interview with News Talk, he met him in a hotel once, but he didn't seem to have. He certainly said he didn't have a personal relationship with him in the way some of the other boxers did.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, let's look at it. In 2017, Daniel Kinahan was known to be a gangster. Like, there was no dispute about that. So, I mean, I think in court he had said that he was cross-examined during his case of Barry McGuigan, and he was asked, some people see MTK as a front for a global drugs business, and he said, "I'm not aware of that. And he says he doesn't suspect anything. When it was said to him that Daniel Kinahan was suspected of, various crimes, he said he didn't suspect him of anything. And then, obviously, in 2021, BBC Investigates, which was a very big moment, I think, for Daniel Kinahan. They did a very extensive programme on, was it called Boxing in the Mob or something like that?
Boxing in the Mob.
And really, they linked Daniel Kinahan to all these to his role in boxing. And Carl Frampton was asked about that. And he said, I'm not actually sure if this is a tweet or a comment, but he said it's investigative journalism, but I don't know how much investigation was done. Now, if you look back on that programme a couple of years on, I don't think they could really have said to have got a single thing wrong.
They couldn't have gone any further than they did.
Yeah.
And we all knew where we were at that particular point in time, because while we had the backing of the various comments that have been made in the High Court through cab cases, Daniel Kinahan did not have convictions at that point.
Yeah.
So it was a leap, while the Sunday World and other news media in Ireland had pretty much written the story. To bring that to screen with the power and the punch that Panorama has was, it should have been done by RTE.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the BBC, it took them to stand up and do it.
Yeah.
Just on Carl Frampton to point out, so McGuigan is central to this. And of course, on the Late Late Show, he took an opportunity to have a bit of a punch at McGuigan, and then wasn't asked about MTK, which was disappointing, I thought, as an interview. But McGuigan and himself had a long-standing relationship. McGuigan would say that he sort of took Carl Frampton from nothing and turned him into a world superstar.
Yeah.
McGuigan and his son Shane train a lot of boxers, and I think probably over the past few years have proved again and again that they train champions.
Yeah.
And they know what they're doing. McGuigan himself was a former boxer during the Troubles and brought a lot of joy really to the country, I suppose.
Yeah, so obviously Barry McGuigan ran the business side of Carl Frampton's fights as well. He was his promoter effectively, and Shane McGuigan was more the trainer. So, but what happened with MTK was that that they came in with this amazing business model, really is what, and this is sort of detailed in the BBC Panorama program as well, where they came into this business and didn't seem to care if they made money or not. In fact, they didn't seem to even make any money in loads of their ventures. So boxing is very, very hard to make money. There's a certain elite number of fighters who make a huge amount of money, and there's huge interest pay-per-view, and that's where the big money is to be made. But a lot of it is not really profitable. So MTK came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they seemed to be throwing money at it. They had boxers who they didn't seem to make any money of, ask any money of, and it was so unusual. And that's what sort of skewed the field. That's why they were able to grow so quickly, is that they were offering fighters these conditions that nobody else could possibly compete with, and that's why they expanded so quickly.
Do you know that when it was founded initially in 2012 as MGM, which later became MTK, and founded by Daniel Kinahan and Matthew Macklin, it was founded as a non-for-profit organisation, almost a charity. And they actually gave a lot of money and put on a lot of events for a charity down in Spain, which was called Aspandam. And it was some sort of a children's charity for kids with learning difficulties. There was a young child relative of the Kinahans who had been born with in very tragic circumstances, and I think later passed away. And her photograph was on the backdrop of the reception area. And in the beginning, boxers essentially largely from Tala, certainly Ian Dixon, and there was another boxer that was brought out. They were talented, kind of young guys, but they were brought out and given this gym to work out in, given fantastic trainers and given a place to live. It was a great opportunity for them. But very quickly, I think by 2014, in the blink of an eye, the first big names they started going after was Thomas Stoker, who had been the Olympian, the UK Olympian. And they went after the whole of the UK Olympic team and signed up quite a few of them. And Billy Joe Saunders came involved, and maybe he was an Olympian. I'm not ever will claim to know much about boxing. I don't. But he was one of the early sort of people signed up. And there was another boxer called McDonough. And I, funny enough, knew somebody that knew him and was told that he was given money beyond his wildest dreams. He thought his career was over. He was brought out to Spain. He was given this fabulous villa with a private pool to live in, a chef to cook his food. And I mean, these were guys who were literally dragging their gym bag to work with them. And training in the evenings. And you know what I mean? They were not earning any kind of money, nor were they being treated like superstars. The lure of that. It was like a nirvana.
Because mostly boxing promoters are looking for people who could go on to become world champions and trying to sign them early. But MTK were signing fighters who had very little chance. Again, I'm not a boxing expert, but people would say that, Richard, those people are never going to be world champions. They're never going to then generate a load of money. So why are they being signed? And that's not clear. So but obviously when Carl Frampton was signed in 2017, at that point they were signing world champions.
And it was a mega big
company.
Based in Dubai, of course.
Based in Dubai at that point. And so Carl Frampton, you know, are his interviews tone deaf about MTK, I suppose, is the real core of it. The second bit of it is, boxers that fought for MTK, should they be able to go on a programme like The Late Late and not be asked about it at the least? Remember, RTÉ are doing as much about the Kinahans nearly as the Sunday World. They've had programme after programme over the last couple of weeks regarding the cocaine busts and everything like that, where the Kinahans have been referred to. They've had long reads on RTÉ. Can someone then go on a programme like The Late Late and not be asked about MTK? Now, obviously...
and especially in the week where we did have that massive big cocaine bust.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all over the news. It was just in the ether.
Yeah.
Now, the last time MTK boxers went on the Late Late Show, it was the Conlons.
Yeah.
Certainly Michael Conlon, and I'm nearly sure Jamie Conlon was on.
Yeah.
Certainly Michael Conlon was on. And Ryan Tubridy was the host, and he was not asked about MTK at the time.
Yeah.
Now, that was pre-sanctions, and I'm not giving the Late Late Show or Ryan Tubridy an excuse on that. I personally couldn't believe that he hadn't been thrown a question about it, because it was just so much in topic. It certainly would have been around the time, I think, that Tyson Fury had called out Daniel, that all the rest of it. Post the sanctions and the fact that you have, you know, some of the most powerful organisations in the world in law enforcement coming together in Dublin Castle, naming them and describing in detail how they were a murderous drug cartel and describing their links to boxing. And the fact that MTK essentially closed down within days of that, of those sanctions, while the company itself wasn't sanctioned. Other boxing companies related to the Kinahans were. I just think it's astounding that he's not asked a single question about it. And then, of course, I don't know again anything about boxing, but I'm getting all these messages and Twitter things saying that they're friends and that
well, Patrick
Healty wrote the introduction or something for the book.
But I think he did write the foreword for Carl Frampton's book. I think that's there to be seen. And of course, like, I'll just read you a passage from the book, which is obviously why he was on promoting the book and why he's been on other programs and other newspapers. Regarding MTK, Frampton writes, "I signed with MTK and it was one of the best decisions of my boxing career. I used to laugh at the bit of grief I'd get in the gutter press or Muppets on social media, stuff about Frampton's gone to MTK for the dough, and then innuendos about where that dough originated." So that's in the book. You know, as reported in the Irish Independent, so by Fionnán Sheahan. So, I mean, like, you know, I mean, is
there an inability to read the room? Is there a difference in how the Kinahans and how their links to MTK and the whole boxing thing is seen down in the south as opposed to in the north? Or is it just that Carl Frampton is sort of bedding down with this narrative that I deserved it, I was a world champion? He's basically saying, and he said on the Late Late Show, he described the case he had with Barry McGuigan, which centred on his earnings. And he's describing in detail, obviously, as well in the book, about how he believes he was ripped off. That case was settled. There wasn't any admission on the side of the McGuigans, but he's really having a go and a dig. And I mean, for him, it's almost black and white. I was ripped off all my career and I finally got this chance and I got this big pay packet and it set me up for life, and I'm not going to apologise for that. I worked hard all my life. I'm a fantastic boxer, world champion.
Which he is.
Yeah. But it is literally as black and white for him as that. And he doesn't have the ability to sort of see where there's a little bit of grey matter going on there.
Yeah. I mean, so what he said, he was interviewed in News Talk, and in fairness, News Talk and the Irish Times, who had an interview with him on Saturday, they both asked him about MTK and published it. But he's asked about MTK on News Talk, and Carl Frampton says, "You see people talking about it and asking about it, but over the border, without sounding horrible, it wasn't as big a deal." And he's talking about the MTK links to Kinahan.
It wasn't as big a deal because people weren't getting murdered and slaughtered on the streets.
It wasn't as big a deal in Belfast. And that's probably what he means is people up there could look at MTK global. And
there was a much bigger disconnect in the north because if you recall, so MTK couldn't put on any shows here.
Yeah.
So since 2016 and the shooting at the Regency Hotel, they hadn't put on a show. At one point they did try and attempt to put on a show, and there was graffiti and there was a security risk and it was called off. I think they tried a few times to kind of come in the back door. under the names of different promotional firms, but it was kind of, again, there was insurance problems, there was security problems. The Gardaí were never able to publicly say that they had reduced that critical risk surrounding the boxing. But all that time, the boxing was actually carrying on regardless in Belfast over the border.
Yeah.
Because I recall we were sending along to it in an effort to see who was going and who was still showing up and who was sort of in place and who wasn't. And it was going on. I mean, at one point, there was a boxing gig on, was there not? That there was a security alert.
Yeah, there was some. I think there was some graffiti went up or something along those lines.
And the PSNI ended up having to blanket security on it, and they ended up charging the promoters the bill basically that it cost them.
Well, let's hear what Carl Frampton says basically is that he was never paid by MTK, right? They managed his career. They weren't his promoter. He was paid directly by the promoters. Bob Arum, I think he refers to, and somebody else. So he's saying, I wasn't paid by MTK, that the deals that they did or the arrangements that were made gave him security for life. He says a couple of times that, I'm a boxer. The other stuff doesn't concern me. I was a boxer boxing. That was it. He says that it's not that he doesn't care about all that. Obviously, I have a heart, but I was a boxer, and that was his deal. And from his perspective, what he's saying is he's nothing to do with organised crime. He doesn't particularly have any ability to investigate organised crime or arrest people for organised crime.
He's an ability to turn a blind eye now, in fairness. And actually, I think that lies at the heart of exactly what happened in boxing and how boxing as a sport was poisoned by Daniel Kinahan. They all turned a blind eye. They all looked the other way because the money was coming in. And I think there was an element of greed that allowed him so deeply embed himself in boxing. And that's a fact.
Well, okay. Well, I'll give you the counter perspective from what I believe Carl Frampton is saying. He's saying, these things are out there. This person has done this. Kinahan is linked to MTK. Broadly, MTK were at least publicly disassociated themselves from Daniel Kinahan. That it's not up to him to, he's a legitimate boxer, and there's deals being done, and he's entitled to have security and get paid what he believes is worth. And it's not up to him to judge the origin of the complicated origin of some of these things, and that where he is from, you hear a bit in the gutter press as he describes it, but it's nobody's convicted or whatever. So that's broadly what he's saying. Now, he signed, I will say...
to say that now, though. I mean, he's saying it now. If he'd said that pre-sanctions, which they were all saying, I mean, they all were saying it. But I mean, what's not to know now? I mean, at the very least, if you didn't know then, you know it now. So surely your approach to any of those questions as a sportsman, as somebody that young kids look up to, is all it takes is just a little bit of PR management in how to answer those questions. And a lot of what he's saying is understandable. As a sports person, you're out there to box. There's people around you looking after the business. You're taking your money from Bob Arum's. Also, I think is his company MGM or whatever his company is called.
Yeah, it's not MGM, but anyway, Top Rank.
You're taking your money from there. All of that is sort of absolutely an acceptable thing to say, but not now is that acceptable to say and to bed down and to sort of say that it's still all gutter press. And the fact of the matter is Daniel Kinahan is sanctioned in the same way as a Russian oligarch is. He has been described and is wanted. Information on him is wanted by the US authorities for money laundering, for drug, trans-global drug and weapons shipping, and for murder.
Yeah.
So...
And can I look?
What's to like?
Well, what's to like indeed? And remember, so he signed in September 2017, right, for MTK.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say a few of the things that were going on in 2017 with the Kinahans, right? So in April 2017, Imre Arakas was arrested. We believe that Daniel Kinahan had a key role in arranging for him to fly over to Ireland to carry out, to attempt to carry out a planned murder, a very direct role. In May 2017, Mago Gately was shot. Again, Kinahan played a key role in that. In 1 month after Carl Frampton signed in September, in November 2017, there was a very serious hit attempt on Gary Hanley. During the evidence in that case, there was discussions about Daniel, and certainly suggested there was a role in it. Mm-hmm. In May 2017, loads of boxers attended Daniel Kinahan's wedding. They were joined by the Drug Enforcement
Agency, which I didn't realise.
Yeah, and some of the most notorious criminals in the world, full stop.
Ridwan Taghi included, and
Raphael Imperiale, and many gangland criminals from the UK.
Absolutely.
So all of this was going around.
And many, I have to say, recognisable. I mean, Richard Cashman is very recognisable. He was, of course, the partner of John Goldfinger Palmer. Anybody in the UK would know them. They ran a big, huge fraud in Tenerife, actually. A kind of when you buy bits of weeks from a timeshare.
So, I mean, the point, I suppose, about it is, at that wedding, there's all these gangsters.
And Christy Kinahan was sitting there at the top table. Hang on. I mean, who doesn't know that he's a gangster?
And there was many people from Scottish gangs who were also deeply embedded in MTK. So some of this is going around in the ether, not just in the gutter press, but it's also in the ether of the boxing world. Who's connected? Who's there? Those worlds collide. Now, look, does it even need to be said that Carl Frampton cannot be held responsible for any of that? But there must have been a bit of a smell of some of these ties, even if you never believed anything that was in the papers. Sandra Vaughan, obviously, was the head of MTK and never failed in her devotion to Daniel publicly. Now, it just rings a bit funny. And Carl Frampton is he's, in fairness to him, he's dealt with the questions, I think, honestly, in the sense of he's saying, well,
from how he sees it.
From how he
certainly has. But that doesn't mean he's handled them well.
No, it doesn't mean he's handled them well.
I think he's handled them really badly. I think he's just misread the room on what.
Because remember as well, like, the Kinahans were not the idea that they did what happened in Belfast was nothing to do with them is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
I mean, they were an all-Ireland organisation. Their drugs reached into both sides of the community in the north. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Obviously, they reached into the loyalist paramilitaries. A good large part of the funding that those loyalist paramilitaries had going on through those years was a result of selling Kinahan drugs. I mean, it was not something that was confined to the southern part of Ireland. So it's. I think it's.
Yeah,
and I don't think the Late should be getting ex-MTK boxers on without asking them about it. I mean, that's my own personal perspective.
I completely agree with you. Yeah. I mean, what is the late if it allows an interview like that pass without that question being asked? I mean, that was Friday evening. Saturday afternoon, Alan Cherry from our parish was down in Eason's and rattled up and asked him those questions, and he answered them politely, even though they weren't necessarily...
Yeah, not delightedly, but politely.
Not delighted, but he wasn't certainly, in any way, he wasn't going to storm off the Late Show if he was asked or whatever. And the Irish Times at some point obviously asked those questions too. And then he went on News Talk, and presumably I listened to the interview with Kieran Cuddihy and him. He must have known it was coming at the end of that interview, and you can understand why you'd put it at the end in case he did stop and clamp up talking. But nonetheless, those questions have been posed to him. He must have known those questions were a possibility down here in particular.
Yeah.
And that's how he prepared for them.
Well, it's funny he says, obviously, that some of his money came from Bob Arum, from deals, not from MTK.
Yeah.
From the
MTK, I mean, continued in that charitable way to such an extent. I've never heard a single person say they made any money from them.
Well,
I think in actual fact that MTK, when they were sort of their hand was forced somewhat to admit that Daniel Kinahan was in the ether and was working for them, representing them as such and making the connections between them and Bob Arum in the US. From memory, Sandra Vaughan said he did all that work for free.
Yeah.
He believed in boxers. He wanted to better their careers. He was just an all-round good guy.
Yeah.
He never got paid a penny out of MTK, and it was just purely out of the goodness of his heart that he did all that work for Tyson Fury.
Yes. However, I'll say the other side to that is that ultimately Bob Arum then, after the sanctions, after it all fell apart,
Daft.
he spoke about handing over $4 million.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? I mean, I can't remember. I think it's $4 million over a series of 3 or 4 fights, not Carl Frampton fights for sure, but other fights. He personally handed that over to Daniel Kinahan. Yeah. So we're hearing lots of different stuff.
You see, to keep a story straight, you have to make sure that everybody is in line.
Yeah.
And the likes of Bob Arum just seems to be, what is he? He's well in his 80s.
Well, he's 80s, isn't he? Yeah.
A self-professed pot smoker who doesn't really give a shit and just speaks whenever somebody phones him.
Daniel was a great guy, and
Daniel was a great guy, and then I didn't know that about him, and he changes with the wind. I think Tyson Fury is very much pulled away from Daniel Kinahan, despite the fact that he has been caught up in it through bans of travelling to the US along with his brother Tommy.
But you do have to say about Tyson Fury, okay, maybe the questions have stopped now, but Sky Sports, other organisations, they put the questions to Tyson Fury about Daniel Kinahan, certainly at the last time.
It's extraordinary, though, that nobody's put those questions to Matthew Macklin, because he was the co-founder.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyson Fury was, in fairness, a boxer. Have you watched the Tyson Fury at home with the whatever it's called?
I've actually saw a few
on Netflix. I've seen a bit of it. And I was always of the opinion that Tyson Fury did that selfie video under the instruction of Daniel Kinahan. I would have always believed that Kinahan had full control over that. You watch that documentary and you realise that Tyson Fury is perfectly capable of going off on one and doing that without any instruction whatsoever. He has certain little personality issues that the wife, Paris, actually comes across really well on it. I mean, I don't know how she puts up with him or sticks the way he behaves, but she does. And he is absolutely, focused on one thing. But yeah, I think he was perfectly capable of coming out with that selfie without any instruction. And probably that forced their hand then to describe how Kinahan was, of course, involved in the ether. Everyone knew. It was like the elephants are the emperor's new clothes. Like, I mean, everybody knew Daniel Kinahan was there.
Yeah.
But we were sort of always a little bit restricted. And then, of course, they came up with this story that, oh, yes, he is working in the background, but it's all for free.
Yeah. I think it's a funny thing, because I read some of the other sections of Carl Frampton's book, and I thought they were really good. And you have to remember, he is a hero up in the north. He's he's been a kind of a cross community hero. He's spoken very strongly on various issues. Does a lot of good charity work, all of that. And
he's definitely very popular.
Yeah.
I don't think he did himself any favours, A, with the way he's answered about Kinahan and the rest of it, but B, and in particular, the bitterness there from McGuigan.
Yeah.
And I think McGuigan is overall liked and seen as a bit, he's seen as a sporting hero.
But he was
in Ireland. I have to give it to him. He was one of the very few voices of boxing that came out on that Panorama show, because everybody else was too scared. And he bravely stood up and spoke out about Kinahan's involvement in boxing. And sort of behind the scenes, I know, and you know, how important it is to get somebody to come forward. You can't make a documentary when nobody speaks to you.
No.
So there was very few people willing to actually speak to Panorama that time. And McGuigan's interview was so vital to that program's actual broadcast that it was a hugely brave thing for him to do. And what you have as well is those other boxers. Was it Saunders was slagging off his daughter's death?
Yeah, which was.
I mean, it's disgusting.
It is, and look, I mean, it's
Billy
just
Joe Saunders,
it just rings funny, doesn't it, to go from whatever that dispute, which is really a small scale now, big scale for Carl Frampton in terms of his money.
It's a financial dispute over whether he got 7.5% or should have got 10. I said that to you on the way in the door here.
Yeah.
Like if he got 7.5%, which is what he said of the purse, like an author would get 10% of the purse of a book as such. A performer might be doing well to get 10% of the purse. Like that might sound to people absolutely tiny, but there's so many people to be paid to create a star or of any sort, be it in sport or be it, on stage in any way.
Well, he has his perspective on the money. Like we're not here to judge the rights and wrongs of that. Obviously, all of that information is out there now. But I just think that ultimately the boxers who fought for MTK have to take some responsibility for what it was and what it publicly was. I mean, in 2017, there was no doubt about the role the Kinahans were playing in organised crime in Ireland. I mean, I just think that is a fact. We've been through Operation Shovel. Yeah. We've been through the Regency Hotel. We've been through various gun battles on the streets of Dublin. And I just think to say...
And by 2018, Daniel Kinahan was named as the head of the Kinahan Organised Crime Group in the High Court here in Ireland.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, to blindly still hold that position.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be such a... I mean... It would make a difference if somebody came forward and said, I knew all the rumours, but I was stuck in it. There was no way out for me as such. I was caught up in this.
Yeah.
I had committed to doing this. Yeah. I had committed to doing that. On a day-to-day basis, there was no sign of Daniel Kinahan. And there was this counter kind of story that, oh no, it's just the media, which maybe is believable if you're in a bubble in Dubai. Like Daniel Kinahan is a most convincing person. Yeah. Like his father before him, he's actually at the heart of his being is that he is a fraudster and he's able to convince people that black is white.
Yeah.
He has an amazing effect on people,
not
only in the boxing fraternity, but those in the criminal fraternity as well. I've spoken to people, really, really, really tough guys in the background there who would have held roles over the decades in criminality. Now, serious criminals who maybe are falling out of love with him. And it's like as if they're being deprogrammed from a cult.
Yeah.
They're questioning themselves all the time. They're questioning everything. They have been fed so many lies that their actual sense of reality is skewed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of guy that all these boxers were swirling in the ether of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it can be a
little bit of
alluring, but I think
truth and honesty maybe from somebody saying that.
Yeah, I made a mistake.
I can see now exactly what was going on. I mean, there's nothing to deny it now.
Yeah.
We've heard the US. We can see now that what was in the media was true, but I was being told a different story then.
Yeah, and I believed it, and I shouldn't have.
Exactly.
But look, that's not how he feels. So
yeah. So yes, of course, it isn't how he feels, and you can't make anybody feel any which way.
No.
But and look, he answered the questions. And again, this boxing story, we keep sort of falling in and out of the ring when we're talking about the Kinahans, don't we?
Yeah. And I think the thing about the boxing thing is, though, it shouldn't, in the Irish media down here, it can't be separated. Like they have to be, they made a choice to fight with MTK.
Yeah.
And they have to be questioned about it. I think that's a basic. And they don't have to be held responsible for anything because they're clearly not responsible for any of the actions of the Kinahan cartel. Like it's beyond stating the obvious.
Yeah.
But they do have to, I think, answer questions about why they made those choices.
And to finish with it, I suppose, just to tip on the idea that, I mean, there is a lot of rumours going around the boxing world that Daniel Kinahan is still involved.
Mm.
And I believe he is still involved in
Yeah.
boxing,
Yeah.
which is just extraordinary. He's like one of those, last scenes in a horror movie where you have this hand coming out of the water and clinging to the side of the boat. He won't walk away from it.
No.
He will not give it up. It's something that he believes should be his.
Yeah, and it's over there in that part of the world, the Middle East, and really what goes on there, it's just not equivalent to what goes on in countries like Europe or the US, where there's a certain degree of accountability. Who knows?
There's a damage done, I think, to that sport that will never be undone.
Yeah.
Even if Kinahan comes back here, he's put before the Special Criminal Court and locked up, I think the mark he's made on that sport will forever be felt.
Yeah.
So now.
So there you go.
So
By yourself.
That.
Yeah. Damsel in distress.
Yeah.
Nicola Talent doesn't always. Not the first.
Not the first time that hasn't worked for me. No.
It just doesn't.
Definitely
don't
not.
necessarily go together.
And you know what? I actually would have had no problem just going into a bike shop and paying somebody to fix my tire for me whatsoever. But do you think there was one?
No.
There's loads more at least now.
Yeah.
Do you cycle now?
No.
Just the one blind eye wouldn't help, I suppose, with cycling, would it?
That'd be no problem to me to cycle. It's just not on my approved list of exercise activities.
It's a quicker way to get around than actually driving, believe it or not, in Dublin. And it is great when everything goes right, like all things.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, look, we'll reconvene later in the week.
Thanks very much, Nicola.